First, I want to address, this time is going to be very much different than most times. And the reason why is because Orman and I had a conversation a couple days ago. Yeah. And the outcome of that was a realization or a revelation, I suppose, for me that most of the time when I'm doing this sort of thing, I tend to tell you all what you already know, what you've already heard before, maybe from a different angle, maybe from a different standpoint, but it's not new, and it's not original in many respects, right? So this is going to be kind of a bit of an experiment. Today you get me just as I am, and you get some thoughts and some work that I've done and some observations that you probably have not heard before, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be a new one.
So the agenda on the table today is three things, and I've got them written on the board. The first one is that we are going to destroy world history, including the history that you think you know about humanity and the planet. Then we're going to debunk astrophysics and solar mechanics, I suppose. And then the third thing that we're going to do is we're going to reconstruct the universe with you standing in it. So, y'all okay with that? Yeah, good. Okay, let's get on with it then. So I want you to ask yourself something. What if, just kind of contemplate this for a moment, what if everything I think I know about history turned out to be a lie? Just think about that for a moment. Who knows how old the planet is, roughly? What does science say about how old the planet is?
14.5 billion.
Well, the planet itself, right? Not the universe.
4 billion.
Yeah, 4.6.
That's what they say. That's what they say.
It's what they say, yeah. They say it's 4.6 billion years. And how long has modern humans been on this planet? Modern humans, as in Homo sapiens sapiens is what I think they're called. Roughly 40,000 years, is that right?
No, more than that.
Blink of an eye. That's nothing in comparison. That's literally, you know, if you were to put all of history of the planet, 4.6 billion years, as 1 hour on a clock face, the amount of time that humanity would be here would be what, 1/100th of a second, something like that. Not even a blip on the radar.
They actually found a hammer which is 1 million years old.
I'll get to that in a moment. I'm not saying that there are not hominid species that are that old, but modern humans, roughly 40,000. Even at 1 million years old, though, it's still a blip on the radar, right? Okay. So, how do you explain the sudden emergence of civilization roughly 8,000 years ago? Let me explain what I mean by this. About 8,000 years ago, roughly, in Sumeria, or Sumer, all of a sudden, like almost overnight, in a historical standpoint, civilization just sort of popped up out of nowhere, complete with schools, complete with laws, complete with advanced architecture, complete with astronomical observations, complete with timekeeping, the wheel, all of these things. In fact, you know, we measure circles in 360 degrees. The Sumerians decided that that's how it would be measured based on certain mathematic principles that they supposedly discovered. The timekeeping, the way that we manage time in 24-hour days, in 12-hour segments, is 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds per minute, and so on and so forth. Another Sumerian sort of thing. And yet, if you look just prior to that civilization, there's no evidence that they had a trial and error period It's not like, you know, they built a ziggurat and it toppled over because they didn't get the engineering right, or you know, they were making square wheels and some suddenly discovered that a round wheel made more sense. I mean, it literally, they went from nothing to almost everything that we have today from a civilization standpoint, like that. Doesn't make much sense, does it?
I do now.
And science tries to explain it, but they really can't. And the one thing that they never do is that they never actually go back to the history and ask the Sumerians what it was, how it happened, right? Because if you go into the historical texts of the Sumerians, they say, hello, popped on there. Hi, Kevin. They say that they learned it all from the gods, right? Or they learned it all from those who were before. Now, we tend to kind of think of that as like, okay, you know, they were primitive, they had simple minds, right? They didn't understand. It was just their way of expressing things. And yet, if you look at human nature and you look at almost every single ancient civilization, they all say the same thing. The Egyptians, you know, we don't know how this, we don't know how this got here. It was here when we arrived. The gods taught, right? Or taught, however you want to pronounce it, taught them mathematics and writing and science and all this type of stuff. It's interesting to me from the standpoint that humans today, we're very proud of our inventions. We're very proud of our accomplishments, our achievements, and we like to brag about them, don't we? We like to say, oh, you know, I did this, I invented that, I invented gravity, right? Those sorts of things. I invented the internet. It's sort of human nature to take credit for one's discoveries, but they didn't. They never did. Yeah. So it just kind of makes you wonder. But that's what they had to say about it. Now, what about the? Let's take a couple other aspects to it. So I'm going to wind in for a bit on this. Let's take the universal flood myth. Do you know that every ancient culture has a flood myth? Right.
As a what, sorry?
Every ancient culture has what's called a flood myth, the global flood, story of a global flood, like Noah's Ark.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, I think it is, that sort of thing. And I'll get into how that ties in here in a bit, but there's really a lot of evidence to support it. And by the way, I have a lot to cover here, so if you see me over here looking, it's because I'm cheating off of my notes, all right? I'm trying to keep it on track, so don't be distracted by it. But what I'm really on about here is that all of the ancient cultures say that there was a time before, right? A time before this huge destruction of the planet. A time when giants ruled the earth. A time when you know, these great beings. Hold on, hey, Orman, can you mute, please?
If it doesn't work.
I can't mute you. 1 second. Okay, it's fine now. And so the proposition here is that I don't feel like we are the only intelligent life that has evolved on this planet. We're simply the most recent in a long, long line of this. Now, how could that be possible? Well, I think, you know, most of the time scientists would look back in the fossil record and say, well, you know, if that was the case, if there really was some sort of ancient civilization that was just as advanced as us and just as intelligent as us, then there should be some fossil evidence for it. But actually there wouldn't be. And here's the reason why. Because if you think about for a moment what it takes to create a fossil of a mammal, like something our size or a dinosaur even, it's actually kind of an extraordinary occurrence, because if it just dies on the ground, then, you know, birds come pick it apart, bugs, everything destroys it, the elements destroy it. It does not become a fossil. So already 99.99999% of everything that has perished on this planet beforehand would never become a fossil to begin with. Usually the conditions required to make a fossil is a rapid death and then suddenly being buried or covered. like a flood or something like that, right? Where it preserves that aspect intact. So there's that. Now, the other aspect is that really no fossils can even exist beyond about 2.6 million years, roughly. By that point in time, the planet does such a nice job of grinding it to bits that it turns everything back into molecules. So to put this in perspective, the oldest possible fossil that we could ever find would be about 2.6 million years back. Yeah. The way to think about this is that if you had a jigsaw puzzle with 10,000 pieces, that would be the equivalent of finding about 5 pieces. If you found every single fossil that had ever been buried, ever, right? 2.6 million years back, that would be 5 pieces of a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. So do you think that we really can rely on, that sort of history to tell us whether or not, we're the only or we're the first? I don't think so. Questions so far? No? Okay.
Oh, you mean us? When you would say,
Yeah, I was
You want-
asking, I was
you
pausing.
want
to
us
see
to
if-
ask you a question? Is that it?
I'm just making sure that we're tracking right now.
I'm listening.
Okay. So I talked about the fact of the universal flood. I want to kind of go back to that, or I'm sorry, the universal flood myth. I want to go back to that for a moment because every culture, every civilization has something like this where it follows the exact same story. There was a huge flood. Almost everybody perished, and only a few survived, whether it be on an ark or a boat or taken up to the clouds, whatever the case may be. Only very few survived, and humanity basically started over. And scientists have discovered that this is actually probably true in some respect, because during the last end of the last glaciation period, when the ice caps started to melt, I'm going to draw you a picture actually. Let me switch. I'm going to show you what the planet used to look like. You guys see me here? Great. Okay. So here's the planet. And at one point in time, basically this half and this half were covered in ice. Yeah, you see that? And so this is the area here in the middle that was habitable for a great deal of time. And then right around 40,000 years ago, something changed and these polar caps began to melt. And what happened is they were flowing, kind of trickling down into the Black Sea Basin, which was a freshwater lake at that point in time. And it got to the point where it overflowed the bounds of the Black Sea Basin and spilled out into the Mediterranean Sea. Now, at this time, sea levels are also rising because of the melting, which is already for tens of thousands of years pushing the coastlines inward. So if there were civilizations that were there, then they would have had to be moving. But when this spillover happened, it would have been the equivalent of 200 Niagara Falls all at the same time, encroaching by about a mile a day with hundreds, if not thousands of feet of water, and covering 100,000 square kilometers, which for it's 39,000 square miles. It's roughly the state of Colorado. Now, what that would have caused, so that's already catastrophic for that entire region that most of humanity is inhabiting at this point in time. And what that would have caused would have been a wider surface area for the water, which causes more evaporation throughout the planet, and it begins to rain everywhere because of all this evaporation. And so no matter where you were on the planet at that point in time, you would have had these kind of torrential rains, floods, and wiping out civilization. Now, if you think about it, even if that were to happen to us today, if this kind of phenomenon happened to us today, our civilization, as technologically advanced as it is, would have a very difficult time surviving. It would basically put us back to a very primitive time. So this is sort of the assertion about this. Now, I have another question. See, I'm just going to kind of put these puzzle pieces together, and then we'll tie them all together at the very end here. Who has seen Saturn? Who has seen Saturn? Just raise your hand. Yeah, you've seen Saturn through a microscope. Hi, Zenith. Through a microscope or a telescope, I presume. Hopefully not a microscope.
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah. Okay, good. Would you ever mistake it for the sun?
No.
No, because it's barely even visible to the naked eye, right? Look out there. I think that's about where it's at. There's no way you would ever mistake it for being the sun. And yet, every ancient culture, for some reason, all the way back to the Sumerians, called Saturn the sun. They called it various names. They said the first sun, the best sun, and they linked it to what's been known as or called the Golden Age or the Golden Era, Golden Epoch. In Sumer, they called it Shamash, right? And there's for some reason, there seems to be this confusion throughout Babylon, throughout Chaldea, throughout, all of these ancient civilizations said, oh yeah, that was our first sun. That was our original sun. So what do you think? Is it possible? How could something like that be possible? We'd have to throw out everything we think about the way suns work, wouldn't we?
Change our opticians.
Hmm?
We have to
Change
change our
optician.
optician. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sure. So I'm going to share something with you that's a bit different. It's been said in the past that the sun neither heats nor burns. And what's meant by that is that, listen, scientists are really having a hard time explaining a few things about the sun. I'll give you a couple of examples. As solar winds get ejected or solar ejections happen, they actually gain momentum as they pass through the rings of the planet. They don't lose momentum like you would think. So there's one strange thing. Where is it getting that extra force from? Another strange thing has to do with loops, right? You see these kind of solar flares that loop. If you've ever seen the pictures of the sun, well, some of them don't. Some of them are wide open like this. Now that defies physics. I'm sure as a kid you've probably seen, that little symbol with the magnet, with the flux lines they call it, kind of going from north to south. That's how magnets operate. They go from one side to the other. And for these solar flares to just be wide open, projecting out into space and not linking up, confuses physicists, astrophysicists. What it literally means is that there is some negative charge out in space that it's being attracted to and looping to instead of looping to itself. The interior of the sun is colder than the outside. That doesn't make sense if there is a fusion process of hydrogen fusing into helium, like they think, right? It's actually cooler on the inside by about 300 times, I think.
So is a flame candle.
Huh?
So is a flame, the blue part of a flame on a candle.
Right. Yeah. Because, and actually that is almost a plasma condition. It's kind of where I'm going with this. Is that the sun is not a nuclear fusion reactor like we think it is. It actually behaves much more like a plasma type of environment. Now, plasma is a state of matter that when some element is subjected to high energy, very, very high energy, what happens is it just kicks the electrons off, right? That classic model where there's electrons orbiting a nucleus. Kicks those off and creates this kind of charged environment. This is what the sun, all the evidence of the sun actually behaves like. One more thing I forgot. they just discovered fairly recently that the sun has a surface underneath what we see, and that surface is composed of iron. Now, how in the world could iron survive in a situation like that? It couldn't. It just absolutely couldn't. It's throwing off what we think of as far as the physics of the sun go. Okay, so the proposition is that the sun is more of an electromagnetic phenomenon rather than a nuclear fusion phenomenon. And that bucks against obviously what we've been taught in school, but it's turning out to look like that's probably more likely, yeah, than a fusion reaction. Now, if that's the case, it raises a couple of questions. The first question is, where is it getting the energy to be able to do that? Because have you guys ever played with a plasma ball? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like this globe, yeah, and you put your hand on it and the little electric arcs kind of follow your hand and whatnot, you know, the like spider webs and all that. That's more like what I'm describing that the sun is, but on a very massive scale. But you know that takes power, right? That takes energy. That takes a current going through it. So if that is the case, where's the sun getting this energy? Well, it turns out, I'm going to go back to the chalkboard. Turns out that there's something called Birkeland currents, and they are millions upon millions upon millions of amps flowing through the universe as wide or wider than our solar system. It's actually a double helix kind of spiral. So there's two of them like this, and they travel through the universe. And some smart kid just recently, I think within the last 5-10 years, about 22, I think, MIT student, solved the riddle of where all the missing matter in the universe is. Because, you know, scientists have these calculations, right, where they say, well, only half of we only see half of the universe, therefore there must be something like dark matter, or there must be, you know, this bit that we're not seeing. He solved it, and the way that he solved it is that a quasar lit up. I can't remember which one it is, but you know, a quasar is like one of those. It emits all this radiation, and he looked at the visible universe, what we can see, through a special type of telescope that can see these kind of emissions, and he was able to see all of these connections, right? And so you've got like a galaxy here, you've got a galaxy here, and in that kind of condition, you start to see all of these things that look like this, but they're, you know, the size of solar systems, all connecting to different galaxies, to different solar systems, to different this and different that. Now, what this reminds me of is more like how you would kind of depict the human mind, doesn't it? Where you have this electrical potential, right? All of the neurons, the synapses and the dendrites and all those sorts of things connecting to one another via sparks of current. And I mean, literally the entire universe is connected electromagnetically through these currents, including our sun. And you know, another interesting thing, we know about lightning, right? We've all seen lightning, but an opposite thing also happens going upwards. I think they call them sprites, I believe. Sprites, fairies, things like that. But an opposite thing happens upwards in our atmosphere, and especially when we get so camera following me now. Yes, it is. Especially when we get these kind of solar flares that bombard the atmosphere, then it comes into our planet, but it also ejects something out, something back up towards the sun. And so this our whole solar system is this kind of interplay of electrical energy pumping throughout the universe. And it's driven by these absolutely massive currents that flow through space. With me? Good. So
So's the dog.
switch back this way.
I said, so's the dog.
Those the dog. The dog's with you too. Yeah.
The dog's with us too, yeah.
Good. So where I'm going with this is the idea that, first of all, we don't know human history. We can't know it, right? We don't know planetary history. And it turns out we don't even know how our solar system operates or how the universe operates based on kind of what we've been taught, what we've been told in school. What if it actually is the case that what makes a sun is, or a star, is not something like fusion, but what it's in contact with from the core of the universe or from the core of the galaxy? And what if just a slight shift in that energy would then ignite a new sun? You know, like you take something like Saturn or Jupiter or any of these what are called gas giants, and a lot of times they're described as failed stars because they have so many of the characteristics. They could almost be a star. In fact, Jupiter itself, if Jupiter was not in our galaxy and was just maybe a little bit bigger, it would be considered a brown dwarf because it actually radiates more energy than it receives from the sun. It's almost there, right? Even according to classic astronomy. So we don't know history. We don't know how the universe works, but now we're playing around with this new theory that maybe it's more like the ancients said, as above, so below, right? Where you can see that what we carry up here is almost like a universe with the synapses firing and the electrical connections going, you know, from one area to another. The whole universe could be like that. The whole universe could be connected in a very similar fashion. Now, accidents in the universe happen, and we witness them all the time. Right? We see stars bumping into one another. We see planets. Well, we haven't seen planets crashing into one another, but we know that things are, although they are generally ordered on a macroscopic or a very large level, they're not so generally ordered on the smaller worlds, on the smaller levels. And so, is it possible that there was a time when we were in a different solar system where Saturn was our sun instead? And, you know, a couple planets, including us, were part of that system of Saturn. And then Saturn comes moving into this system. Now, what happens? Saturn's very small compared to the sun, right? By incredible orders of magnitude, actually. Comes into this system, it's doing just fine, it's glowing, it's in this kind of, you know, arc of current running through the universe, but it comes into this one and suddenly it just goes out, just extinguishes. And the reason why is because when you get something higher power, higher charge, coming into contact with something lower charge, then it becomes negative relatively. I'll show you what I mean. It's not all about positives and negatives. Okay, here is a massive charge. Over here is a not so massive charge. Now, on its own, this not so massive charge here is going to seem positive, especially, you know, if it's got planets running around it. But as soon as it comes into a slight range of this, it becomes negative with respect because this is so much more positive energy. Do you understand? Understand what I mean? Okay, so it would literally extinguish, and we see this actually. We can replicate this sort of phenomenon in a laboratory with plasma globes, like I was talking about, right? Where you get it close, and if one is supercharged, it begins to arc towards the other one, even though apart they're different, right? So the proposition is, what if? What if we switched? What if there was a point in time when we looked up in the sky and we were a lot closer, obviously, because of the orbit or the mass, right? What was it, Kepler's laws? We'd be a lot closer, but we'd look up in the sky and we would see this other sun, and then something amazing just happens eventually. Now, what would happen? So, you know, you think about this sun, Saturn, being a fairly low energy type of environment. We would be much closer to it, but the planet would be a lot colder on the north and south poles. because North and South poles will be further away, right? Just like they are today. But this center area would be nice. It would be like Florida all year round in that part of the Earth. But the North and South poles would be caps. Now, scientists don't know why the polar ice caps just suddenly started melting. But I think a reasonable explanation would be is that, if it skipped from, if our planet skipped from this solar system into another solar system, then of course that high energy is going to start melting those and causing these sorts of things. So you see how all this is sort of tying in now?
If planets were circling around and started to circle around sun, something would happen, some catastrophic thing maybe, because they will have to change.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that would have been a what scientists call a major extinction event. And it's unlikely, actually, if you work out the physics of it, it's unlikely that it would have happened all at once. More than likely, if that hypothesis is true, Saturn would come in carrying the planet, it would disrupt a little bit, and then it would leave the solar system again. And it would do this multiple times over the course of millions of years. But at some point in time, eventually it would lose that energy and just fall into orbit around the higher body. So yeah, you're right. And the planet does show evidence of these mass extinction events that happened. And we don't really know why. I have another weird thought about this. Why is history always buried? What I mean is, I'll give you an example. I went to Greece a while back. I think it was about 10 years ago or so, or longer. And I went to one of the oldest churches in Athens. And it's interesting, right? Because I had to walk down a flight of stairs, about 5 or 6, maybe 7 stairs, to get down to where the church was 1,000 years ago. So the Earth has gotten, this much taller, this much bigger in just 1,000 years. How much bigger do you think? I mean, like every time they do an archaeological dig, it's never just sitting on the surface, is it? Yeah, you always have to dig down for it. You always have to go deep for it. Yeah. And it's not just because, I mean, I'll give you another example of where I'm going with this. Dinosaurs, they couldn't survive today. These dinosaurs that are like, as tall as buildings or whatever, the amount of pressure it would take for their heart to pump the blood all the way up there is impossible. They would literally not be able to get off the ground. Dinosaurs would be in our current gravity. Dinosaurs would be dead, but flat on the ground, right? But in ancient times, what that alludes to is that we had less mass. The planet itself was more weightless, had less gravity, right? It wasn't pulling as strongly on us. So now let's take into consideration. Let's just say that some of this is true, mostly true, or even possible. And that we are not the first being or the first conscious evolution on this planet, but the most recent. And all the ancient cultures say this. There was the Egyptian, the time of Zep-Tepi, right? The Epic of Gilgamesh talks about these generations of gods, these generations of giants that lived for thousands of years, right? The King's List, I think is what they call it. Each of them lived for thousands of years, and they were absolutely humongous, some of them 50 feet tall. You still see the statues, don't you? Of these giant, what are called gods today. But let's say that we did live in a Saturnian planet, a planet orbiting Saturn. And
Late hours? Right, jij. Heb je nog wel een extra rondje gedaan? Nee,
mute.
vandaar dat het zo lang duurt.
Okay, thank you.
Kom nou.
There we go. All right, so let's say that we did actually live in an environment like that. And there was, hey, Lucy, can you mute, please?
About if this history about this giant.
Oh God.
I'll take questions in just a
Oh,
moment.
hij hoeft niet non ho capito lui.
Someone in the background. Who's
Not mine.
okay?
Walk this way. What?
Hmm?
Whoop.
Ah, hey, glistening. Can you mute, please?
Oh, wow, I didn't realize. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I
Anyway,
was beginning to think it was your alternate voice,
yeah, it could be.
your other side, you know.
Yes. So again, let's say that we did, or that this planet did have a different type of conscious life on it at that point in time, and suddenly encounters this kind of environment where really, a 50-foot tall human probably wouldn't survive either, would it? Right? Wouldn't survive in an environment like this anymore. What would be your most logical guess? Find something that could, find a life form on this planet that possibly could survive, that was maybe smaller, maybe had more, had enough agility to be able to do it. And if you had the technology to genetically splice your attributes into something like that, maybe you would do it. Now, you'll say, okay, so where's the evidence? Well, the evidence is in the second chromosome of the human chromosome system. First of all, we have 23 chromosomes, right? 23 pairs of chromosomes, I should say. Chimpanzees have 24 pairs of chromosomes. And there's something very interesting about our second chromosome, which I will draw out here. Can you guys see over here? We're just going to draw a chromosome like this. Okay. And at the edges of chromosomes, there's something called a telomere. It sits here, and it's what helps bind things from a DNA perspective. And then in the middle, there's a band called the centromere. Okay, center and outer, or inner and outer. And every chromosome is like this. Every chromosome has telomeres on the outside, centromeres on the inside, except for chromosome number 2 in the human being, and the human being alone. In our chromosome number 2, see if I can get the colors correct here. What we have is this. We have a chromosome, but we have a bond of telomeres on the inside and centromeres on the outside. And what it looks like is that something got spliced, something got split, injected, and put back together, in a very specific way. That's the big difference between us and a chimpanzee. They have these split apart with their centromeres and telomeres in the place that they should be, but we don't. And it's a very difficult thing to explain, especially if you follow the idea of evolution, because something like that, that's a leap. That is a leap. That's not something that can just accidentally happen from an evolutionary standpoint. And probably splitting things like that and putting them back together, if it wasn't done with some form of intelligence, would kill the species, I would think. It's just a lot of evidence for that sort of stuff. We have this term, right? Genesis, the genes of Isis. The idea in this is that, well, I guess going back to all the ancient civilizations, they all have this story of the gods coming and creating humans, creating humanity. The genes of Isis might tie into this from the standpoint of, the winged disc, where you've got the solar disc in the middle and the wings going off of it from Egypt. That might be that split right here, where representing the first time that this genetics entered the planet, where the eyebrows, instead of being a unibrow, as they call them, right, actually have that split in there. A difference. And speaking, by the way, of kind of going back to the idea that there may have been other intelligent life on this planet, do you realize that as recently as 15,000 years ago, we were sharing the planet with other species of humans? This is a weird thing to think about, because You look around at dogs and cats and this type of stuff, and in the animal kingdom, there are different species of things, right? There are zebras, and zebras are not horses, and horses are not mules, and so on and so forth, right? There are different species of things, and that you look at humanity, and there aren't. There's just Homo sapiens sapiens. It's only one species, but 15,000 years ago, there were at least three that we know of. And scientists have also discovered something even more curious, is that, a lot of people have Neanderthal DNA. We've discovered that, we've seen that. But there is also a bit of our DNA that is A, non-human, and B, unidentified. In other words, it is not a human species as part of our DNA. You can look this up. It's fairly common knowledge in genetic research. They don't know what it is, but every human being alive today carries this non-human DNA. What is it? Right? I mean, there's so much evidence pointing to that we don't live in the kind of universe that we think we live in, that we may have been genetically engineered to survive on a planet that changed. That we shared the planet with other types of humans, and we're basically the only one that made it, right? Are you overwhelmed yet? Is anybody like thinking about this? These are some serious considerations. These are the kinds of things that I think about in this. And it brings me around to the idea that if something was kind of looking out for their own survival by injecting them into a species on this planet that could survive, and the result is us, then we're kind of in a funny position, aren't we? And I've long held this idea that this type of consciousness that we carry around in us doesn't belong in a monkey's body, right? We're basically like an entity trapped in a chimpanzee's body for the most part. It doesn't belong here. And it leads to the idea too that I'm guessing this is probably the only, if not one of the only planets in the entire universe where religion is even necessary. Because I would think that if we were continuing on like this, this conscious entity that evolves consciously, moves on, becomes a part of the universal universal stream of consciousness, right? That what good would religion be? Religion seems to be like, hey, try this. Can you please just try and get it right this time, right? And it comes again. Nope, they still didn't get it right. All religions are saying the same thing. They're just saying, wake up. That's the only thing every religion ever says. It doesn't say anything other than just wake up, right? But we have so many different religions because I guess we just don't get the point. But I don't think religion exists anywhere but here.
I'll ask you something. Do you mind?
Yeah, please.
From the standpoint of a scientific point of view,
Yes.
right? It is as you've said. Plus lies, plus whatever they've contrived, plus the science of misinformation, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point, or what is the human event about then, if all of this isn't as it should have been, or this is what it wasn't?
Mm-hmm.
Difficult to see the two differences there.
Yeah.
What then about us? Like these good people sitting here, you, me. The difference between us and monkeys is that monkeys aren't conscious.
Right.
Clever, but they're not conscious. So the conscious domain of life, I agree with you, is not human. It's not actually even planetary.
Yeah.
I do agree with you on that. The rest is arguable because we practice being conscious and awake every day of our lives. So it's something that we actually have a great deal of experience about.
Yes.
So if we lived as a monkey, we would expect a monkey's evolution, right?
Yeah.
So if we live as a human, we expect a human evolution. But if we're living as a human with a greater possibility because of the addition of the conscious life, whereas everything else on this planet isn't conscious, it's fully awake, but it's not conscious like us.
Yes.
So we did come from somewhere, because if we look at it that point of view, then the original human race had to be monkeys.
Yeah. Eventually, they might have evolved into something similar to
What
us.
yeah, well, you say yeah quickly, but I mean, what I mean is that means then how do you explain us?
Yeah.
Because you've got to add into this something of an alien event, haven't you?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it this
Alien
way,
interference with the, so we got monkey blood too, I mean, you can have a transfusion from a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have one from a pig, but you won't feel too good afterwards. You understand? I mean, they put pigs' kidneys and livers in people now, don't they?
Yeah.
Next, they'll be chopping up chimpanzees.
but you can't have a brain transplant from one.
That'll come.
Well, maybe.
I gave my bank manager one not so long ago because he didn't ask.
Got craving bananas all of a
He
sudden.
got a brain transplant off me. Yeah, that's right. He's very amenable now. Anyway, the thing is that we breathe this air. We wake up, we go to bed, we sleep, we live. And in that life, as we find it, we have to find some greater purpose if we believe that the planet, as an example, is actually going somewhere.
Yes.
Now, all the shenanigans that's happened in this solar system, that's galactic mistakes, planets being naughty little boys, that's what they call Jupiter, isn't it? They call it the naughty boy of the planetary system, right? Because Jupiter's well known for kicking other planets out of the solar system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's a planet whizzing around somewhere out there in space that's looking for here, but it's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It's not like us. We can stop with our legs and turn around, can't we? But you can't do that in space, can you?
No.
So, it's not as it was in the first place, which means if there was any kind of a creational evolution that was possible for organic life, because we're not planets, right? We're not ancient. We're not giants. We're not giraffes. We're not elephants, trees, flowers, bumblebees. We're humans, so-called pentagrammic shape. And that's not even a planetary shape, is it? Pentagram. That's a sun level. From an esoteric point of view, you see things either at moon level, planetary level, sun level, solar level, star level, different levels.
Yes.
And that's a sun level icon. It's a sun level shape. And the form of life that lives in it is basically sun level, which really means that as we are pentagrammic, we should really be living on a sun.
Absolutely.
But we're not, are we? We're living on a planet.
Absolutely.
And with a planetary evolution in a machine that has a greater evolution than planetary. So it's not surprising that, leading so-called organic life forms like us jump off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that stop the world. I want to get off stuff, right? You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, where does all this come into it? Because we're still going on. When you rewrite creation, as you said you were going to do, I hope it includes what we are in it, because otherwise I shall be going to bed tonight with a blank mind, thinking, what's the point? I might as well eat all those jelly beans and call it a day, that kind of thing.
Well, I think the point is in the promise. And here's an interesting thing. To me,
in the promise.
To me, this is interesting, right? If you remove all the butterflies from the planet would basically die. If you remove all the bees from the planet would basically die, right? We know that almost any species, any critter that roams this planet right now, if you were just to get rid of them entirely, it would have extreme consequences, negative consequences for the planet. Now, what happens if you just get rid of humans?
Get rid of
humans. The planet suddenly.
And it wouldn't exist.
No, the planet would thrive.
Really? Well, I
She
would
would-
be here, so I wouldn't know. But like, come on, seriously.
the planet would revert back to I mean, it would only take a couple hundred years before she took over everything we did here, right? And so what that tells me is that this
Oh, hang
is
on. Whoa, please.
yeah
You said she.
yeah I did.
You said she.
Well, I did. Let me drive this point though first, and then I can come back to the she though.
Hmm.
The point I'm making with this is that if you remove the presence of humans from this planet, very little negative impact happens. In fact, she thrives, which tells me that we are here as a gift. We are here to do something. We're not required for the planet in that regard, but she does support and sustain us for something else because there is a higher purpose. There's a higher potential that the human may actually achieve when they're on this planet.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't mean that they will, but they could, they can, right?
Just
It's a
means the
crucible.
monkeys have become humans again.
Well, and maybe eventually, yeah, right. Maybe that's how it was supposed to be on a planet orbiting Helios instead of Saturn. I don't know.
Orbiting.
Helios. I'm just making a distinction. That sun versus the other.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Well, I said the point is in the promise earlier.
Yes.
And, it is true that we have the ability to be conscious. We're very strange. Have you ever just stopped to think about it, right? We're the only thing that pretends all the time to be something that it's not. You never see your cat, wake up in the morning, pack his lunch in a suitcase and drag it off to work, right? It doesn't pretend to be a human ever. Nothing ever does. Humans, even human children, pretend to be all sorts of things. When I was a kid, I liked to pretend I was a bear, right? Roar, the whole 9 yards, right? I was a bear. But you never see that. This is a huge difference. And so what it means to me is that we have this option, we have this ability to experiment with things. We have this ability to bring different forces or influences into ourselves and to use those to some sort of advantage. I guess it really raises the question of what is it that we bring into ourselves, right? Is it an advantage or a disadvantage? We can get into the whole, human conscious evolution thing. I'll tell you, I don't think consciousness is what people think it is at all.
Go on in.
Okay, then. Consciousness, there's this law in the universe. It's called entropy. And entropy states that everything that's wound up will eventually just unwind, right? You wind up a clock, it eventually winds itself down. You wind up a galaxy, and according to science, it eventually just winds itself down. You wind up a planet, and eventually it stops spinning, right? This is what science says. And yet, they seem to have forgotten the fact. So the way they would describe it is that everything goes from a state of order to a state of disorder, to a state of chaos, right? But they seem to have forgotten the fact that life doesn't do that, because life starts with something very small and builds itself up into something more organized, more complicated, more less entropy, and more, you understand, more. We exert that same influence on everything around us, right? We don't just lay out in the grass and dig a hole for ourselves like a dog does. We build structures. We build things up that we know will eventually fall down, but then we go around repairing them. And so really, all life itself, all life kind of runs contrary to this whole idea of entropy, of everything winding down. There's an aspect.
Do you think the pyramids and the Sphinx and these ancient structures that we obviously can't do anymore because they chopped them out of lumps of rock were done by an awakened mind or a conscious one?
Well, conscious. not awakened, conscious. And I don't think it was done by us for the most part. I think what we did was an imitation in some respects, but you're right, we can't do it again. We can't, if we set out to build a pyramid today, we wouldn't be able to build it. And by the way, speaking of antiquities, a pyramid is not what we think it is. You see these shapes in Egypt, right? What are they called? Can you see this? Someone help me out with the name. You see these towers, right? All over in ancient civilizations. Right?
Obelisk.
Yes, obelisks. Thank you.
What
Given
was
the
that?
idea,
Say that again. A what?
an obelisk.
Oh, an obelisk. Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what we see of pyramids. There's something below it. There's something buried. It's another obelisk, but it's just absolutely massive. And there's 21 pyramids, not just 3 that we're kind of all caught up with. But yeah, this is, I mean, talking about the history and the antiquity of things. If we started digging down, this is what we would find underneath it. If we started digging down based on hundreds of thousands of years, you'll find that it's that. It's not just the top of it. You know, when they discovered the pyramid, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong camera. When they discovered the pyramid, it was mostly buried. What we see of the pyramids today, they had to actually excavate and move everything out of the way. And then they got to the base of it and they're like, ah, right, done. I don't think so.
It's the same with the statues on Easter Island, isn't it?
Yeah,
They're half buried.
yeah, absolutely. Actually, so many of these artifacts, we just stop at a certain point, because what does that say? If you have to dig down 150 feet further and the planet buries its history, then that means that those pyramids really occurred, 300, 400, 500,000 years ago when they were constructed, not 3,000 years ago or whatever the current guess is, right? That throws all of our history out the window. Of course, if you're trying to protect that history and keep humanity in a state of amnesia about our true origins, then yeah, of course you'll stop digging there. You're at the 4,000 year mark, better quit digging there, right? Anyway. Yeah, but to me, the point really is in the promise. The promise
You were going to explain about the she with the planet?
about the what?
The she. Yeah.
Well,
You got to listen to this guy carefully.
we'll start.
If you're just listening like the general public, you'll not understand what he's saying. It's very clever. And these words come through, and if you miss it, you miss. Really, you promised us a different kind of man, remember? Didn't you at the beginning?
Yeah, I did.
And we've got to find you, Avril. You didn't say that.
Got to find me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the camera again.
You're in there,
Yeah,
but nobody's opened the door yet.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, the fact is, what are we all doing here? And you wake up, you're born, you find yourself in parents, you are what you are. They say, God can choose your life, but or your parents, and thank God you can choose your friends. I mean, that's what you're left with as a motivation for life. And then when you get started on your life, you get indoctrinated up to your bloody eyeballs with stuff you don't want, stuff you don't need, and nobody tells you the truth.
Very true.
And then you are left to wander in the maze of life, struggling like a good one, scrummaging around in the mud on this planet, trying to earn a living. Right? Isn't that the truth of it?
Yeah, and it catches you early. I had an interesting thing happen day before yesterday. My stepdaughter was playing around with her iPad, and she was trying to figure out some math problems on there. And she was struggling with multiplication. She's young. And so I sat down next to her and, got out some goldfish crackers and said, okay, here's how you multiply. Here's, you have 5 of these, like making it very goldfish crackers or little crackers. Doesn't matter. Could have been
Oh, sorry,
anything.
I'm English.
M&Ms, doesn't matter.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it got to the point where she shut down. She got frustrated with the idea of learning math. And I said, well, do you want to learn this or not? And she said to me, it wasn't assigned to me. And I said, well, okay, but do you want to learn it anyway? No, it wasn't assigned to me. Right. And so what this shows me is that even so young in our culture, we get this type of thing where we lose that essence of exploration. And, like none of this was assigned to me. Right. But I am absolutely fascinated about the world in which I live. And so I go out and seek and I try and I, sometimes fail. Sometimes I get frustrated and all that type of stuff. But man, it catches us early, right? Don't need to do it. Wasn't assigned to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't stand much of a chance though anyway, do you? Seeing as, your mother grew you for 9 months.
Yeah, right.
And during that time, you were subject to everything she felt, everything she thought, everything she saw, you were connected to.
Yeah.
You know, that when a woman gets upset and things like that when she's pregnant, the unborn fetus, if you're going to be scientific, baby, if you want to be normal, starts reacting, right?
Absolutely.
You get an unhappy pregnancy. You get happy pregnancies produce fair-skinned children, and this sort of thing. So already before you're born, you've had 9 months of indoctrination into your mother's ways and her transient tree. Yes. And her relatives' antiquity and so on and so on and so forth. And so it's, that's part of the bond between you and your mother. Mm. You see, so, you know your mother better than she does herself at that time, really, because you're unspoiled, but she isn't. So then you're going to start off and try and become a human being as you should be. But they don't give you a chance, do they? So how science doesn't have divinatory ways. It doesn't have the esoteric arts, which we do. We have them naturally. They don't, and you can say the same thing. Science will still try to understand why it is that only Californians would live on a fortnight. Do you understand? When all the dogs, ants and cats and animals run away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on earthquake day, there's only human beings standing on it. That's because somehow or the other, they've lost that sense, which I suppose from an animal's point of view, you would call it common sense, to get out the way. But there's no connection between you and the planet, not the rest of creation, just this one single planet. There's a connection between you and it. But everything we do in our cultural life subdues it, subdues all of the natural connections, subdues everything in us. And we wonder why we don't know. We wonder why we can't do it. Right? I mean, wasn't it you that said, the reason we use telephones is because we're all so bloody stupidly telepathic. Huh? Yeah. And yet tribes in Amazon eat butterflies and they're very telepathic with each other. Look what that last report, that last tribe they found. Yeah. They didn't speak. And when the woman who lived with them for a few weeks said, I never spoke a word, but I knew everything they were saying. But they're eating special kind of vines and they eat butterfly wings and things like this. And then when you do then when science kicks in, it finds that they are, one of the few things on earth that carry a chemical called telepathin, which of course is what stimulates telepathic behavior in people, right? So that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Imagine that, a telepathin sandwich every morning before you go to work. Boy, if you worked on a stock exchange, you'd end up fortune rich, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? That would do, glistening straight down the pan, that one would. I know that for a fact, right? What I'm trying to say is that we still nevertheless exist, right? We are there. Mm-hmm. But coming to terms with finding out that the whole thing's a setup is not so easy to do. So one of the only options you've got left is replace it with something else. So what do you replace it with? A bigger lie? A worse one than the one you had?
Right. Right.
So what you do is then, like you say, you develop this kind of instinct, really, or excitement to sort of go out there and find out for your damn self. Because you can only trust yourself with that in the end, can't you? I can't tell you how many times people have invited me to special meetings with people with three eyes. I'm telling you, seriously.
I'm still working on that one.
Oh, I'll beat you then.
Growing a third one if it happens.
Oh,
No,
seriously. So can we come back to this woman and the planet bit?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, we can. And yet, you know, as a species in amnesia, I think the only way forward sometimes is to go backwards, right? If you're trying to walk somewhere, if you're trying to walk to the grocery store and you realize halfway, what you think is halfway there, that you've been walking 5 miles in the wrong direction, what do? You don't just keep walking in the same direction, right? You turn around and you start walking in the correct direction. Now that's going back. And what I mean by this is that if we have been hypnotized by the culture, if we have been hypnotized by all of this type of stuff, and we realize, we wake up one morning and go, wow, I can do more. I can know more. I can actually have these sorts of connections. Then what you really have to do is go back to your original self.
Right.
You know, Orman was talking about
Concept, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. I can only agree with you anyway. I don't know what anybody else does, but I do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, so yeah, you turn around and you go back and you find yourself and you find your path again. And that's the way forward. If
Got to go back to your original design, haven't you?
That is it. That is it.
The only problem is, what if it's a great ape? You're in serious trouble then, aren't you? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
yeah, I mean, Iona's already got it. Look, see that? Did you see that? You know, well, what I'm saying is, it isn't though, is it? We can't, because like you just said, they've changed something in us, the DNA and whatever else.
yeah. And if you can do something, don't you have an obligation to do it well? I think I do.
I do, yeah.
I think any sort of natural ability that I discover in myself warrants not only further investigation, but it's almost upon me that I have to develop it, right? Otherwise, I'm lesser. I'm lesser than what I could be. Why would anyone want to be lesser than what they could be? I don't.
Well, you know, as well as I do, an awful lot about the esoteric, the occult, the so-called unseen, the mystical, and the rest of it. You're a very esoterically prone man, aren't you? Yes. And I mean, esoteric is just the first doorway to a greater world, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yep. So grappling, just as an example, with the changeover from formality to something which doesn't follow the rules of formality, such as an example, your processes. Okay. I mean, you can't turn around and say, at 16 minutes past 8 tomorrow morning, I'm going to be totally clairvoyant. Now, can you? Come on, seriously. I mean, if you could do that, you'd make a fortune, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
In which case, you wouldn't be here tonight, would you?
Correct. No, I would.
But
I would
yes,
still be
but
here.
how many times have you found yourself being clairvoyant? Now, how the heck did you get to be like that? Because when you try to do it, it never works. But when you find yourself in it, that's when you're on, isn't it? That's when the game's afoot. Yes? Follow what I'm saying? I mean, I've had many sort of like, when you say psychic events, but you can't determine them because they happen with the criteria that the process through which they pour works by. And it doesn't work by human timing. Only going to work does, 9 to 5, right?
Well, here's the oddity in that.
And arguments at 6:30 with wife and things like that. You know, that's normal life, isn't it?
Yeah, but here's the oddity in this, is that if those are natural functions of the human, let me give an example. If I'm constipated, I know something's wrong with my stomach, right? And I want it to work correctly, and I want to become unconstipated. How come we don't take the same sort of rules of physical life and apply those to the divinatory aspects of ourselves, right? If I suddenly find myself, I'm not clairvoyant or haven't had a clairvoyant moment or a mediumistic or an empathic or any of these other sorts of things for quite some time, why don't I set out to fix that? You know, or why, I shouldn't say, because I would. Why don't people set out to fix that? Why don't they set out to be? Because if that's naturally how you're supposed to run, how things are supposed to flow in you, then isn't that kind of a state of spiritual health?
You know, I wouldn't say spiritual.
Well, it's the wrong word.
We have an argument about that, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't believe spiritual. Really, seriously. I find that more.
I don't think we have a word for it, or at least I don't. But
Spirits exist, but not in the form of spiritual. That's the church has coined that one for you. So you've only got a vicar's view of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know different to that too. I know you do.
I know. Yeah.
Yes, but you see, how then are we supposed to cope with something spiritual when everybody considers they are already?
Well,
And that's the truth that one's got to come to listen to come to terms with in oneself, that you're not what you actually think you are.
yes.
That goes with changing around the rules, doesn't it? It goes with, you know, everything's a lie, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you spend your life in a role of life rather than in the actuality of yourself.
Yep.
And you think it's you, but it's not you. How many people in you? How many people live in Senif? Yeah, bring him in. He was about to sort of go for a trip to the moon. Now see it. You know, I got a smile. Look at that. How many people live his life during the day? Yeah. I mean, is it the same man that wakes up as that goes to work? Is it the same man that has his 11s when he's at work? And is it the same man who's coming home when he's tired? No, these are all different people in you. And yet you think it's your life. But you're sharing your life with a mass of other people, aren't you?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So you don't even really have a life, do you? You're not even in that aspect.
Yeah.
So everybody's in a bit of a state, but they don't know it. But you can't tell them because they become offended.
Yes.
And then
I
we
think
try
that's
to tell them the
probably-
truth, they don't want to know, right?
I think that's probably the biggest obstacle to this kind of work, because you know I've done many. You have done hundreds upon hundreds of these types of things, and I don't know how many times I have tried to offer something that people think that they already have, that they already know. You know,
Well, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I'm not wrong either. Trouble
I know.
is, but it's they don't really have to do anything, do they? They don't have to change because they're already happy in their life because they got a life. But what are the chances being born then? They could have been born a blade of grass. They could have been born the flower in their front room.
Yeah.
Imagine having your head chopped off and stuck in a vase for a week. I mean, great fun, that, isn't it? Huh? But we
I don't know.
well,
Hope to
well,
never
come on,
know.
seriously, would you like it? You know, but what makes you think that the plant's not aware of it? Now, I don't want to get too much into it, otherwise you'll end up, you know, kissing the plant goodnight as well as the wife. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, husband, wife, whatever, that kind of thing. I mean, so you really got to, you know, come round to the point is, well, how do you get the message across? Because it has to come across with some option of availability. Otherwise, there's no point. See, we can't take our history back. Money, you see, money is the only thing. Money cannot buy your history back, can it? There's not enough money in the world that can buy your history back.
Nothing can. Yeah.
Well, so we're stuck with ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're coming on to other points, you see.
Well,
We don't even
I
know.
was coming on to the idea that if I'm holding this eraser, what do you call it? What do you guys call it in England? Doesn't matter. If I'm holding this eraser and I know that I'm holding it, would I ever look for it?
I don't know. I can't remember. I've got a mental blockhead at the moment.
Doesn't matter.
I'm trying to keep up with this.
Would I go looking for this if I'm staring at it, knowing that I'm holding it? Would I go searching for it? No, of course not, right? But people come into this type of work imagining that they're holding an eraser that they don't have, right? And when you tell them to look and see, they go, no, I don't need to because I already know I have it, right? So they don't need to go look and see that they are not clairvoyant, that they cannot astral travel, that they cannot do X, Y, and Z, right? Because they come into this thinking they already do, they already have it. And my question is, why? Why bother? Why waste your time? If you think you already have this, don't waste your time here. Go watch a movie, right? You don't need this. And yet, time and time again, people do. They come in and, you know, they just want to sit and kind of be in the wash of it. But the real thing is like, okay, if you have an eraser, in my analogy, then go erase something, because that's the proof, right? If I walk up to a chalkboard thinking I have an eraser and start doing this, I'm going to discover that I don't have one because I can't do it. And I think, Orman, that's the point, is that, you know, when it comes to a reality check, either a person can do these things or they can't, right? It's not.
Yet, strangest thing is, what I was saying is that you do it. You do it during your day. You do it during your life.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'll guarantee you that at least 3 times a day, you are either clairvoyant, empathic, mediumistic, sensitive, or you've got a psyche rather than psychic. That's more to do with the mental life. A psychic event is taking place, but you don't even know it.
Yeah.
Because even though, you know, listen, just because my eyes don't see, right, doesn't mean to say that nothing else in me does.
Absolutely.
Not see, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's the same thing, isn't it, really? Because if you find yourself doing so, really, it's just that what the life that we've lived has done, the biggest damage is that it's subdued our natural self to such an extent that these things are still going on, but we're separate from it. We've been separated.
Yes.
You've been cornered in a shoe shop. You understand what I'm trying to say here? You've
Yeah.
been cornered in the fact you've got to go to the dentist. At least that's, you can have it out without pain. That's something, isn't it? It's a difference between now and the 15th century. Yes. You know, we can have teeth without pain. Maybe even a brain transplant in another 300 years. That will prove your point then, won't it? But what the hell are we doing here then? Because if we're not here for some kind of greater purpose than what we are or think we are, then what's the point? That's something I would always be motivated by, I should have thought. So are people too, because if they begin to see their situation, then they're putting themselves in a position to be able to do something about it.
Well, and that's the reason I'm trying to rip the rug out from under everyone with this one, the way that I started. That nothing is
Why
as.
don't you just tell them they're useless? That's a good start.
No.
Why not? They are.
Because we're going down the wrong road, right? You
Why?
got to turn around. Come back.
I am.
I know you are. Wouldn't be here if you weren't.
Come on, seriously.
Yeah.
See, everybody wants a purifier, don't they?
Everyone wants what?
Well, everyone's in a phenomena. They want phenomena, pillar of fire, things of that kind. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, some got to give them a personal attention or something. You know, I mean, I've never met one, not even a small one. I mean, you know, where are they then? Hey, oh, Glistening's here. Go on, yeah. You
Time.
time.
Oh, time. You know, time is the corrective measure, or the extinction, or the recreation, or whatever. It's time. So
Is it?
I don't know.
Is it your time?
Keep chatting about
Maybe.
that.
It might be.
Is it your time?
Soon.
Seriously.
Soon.
Is it your
Soon.
time now, or when is your time?
I don't know. As long as I have time, then it's time and
Time for what?
life.
Yeah, I'm a bit like you, actually, to be honest with you. I'm not so hard bitten as these disciplinarians, you know. I mean, as long as I've got time, I feel better. Yeah. I want to laze around, that's up to me, isn't it? I want to die tomorrow, that's up to me. Yes. Life on my own terms. That's fair enough. I mean, it's a person's right to be as they want to be, isn't it? So we'll stand up for a person's right to be themselves. I was trying to explain to somebody the other day, you know, you're born with a unique individuality. You're also born But as a consequence of that, the right to have your own identity. That comes with an individuality. Now that's the right way around. But in this culture, it's the other way around. The identity comes before the individuality. That's why you've got a Lord Mayor in your particular town or city. Yeah? Temporary gods. The chain gang is what I call them, you know, with it. Badges of office. Here comes a member of the chain gang, right? Almost as bad as the Pearly Kings and Queens from Whitechapel down in London, right? See, but they're gone in a few years' time, aren't they? Like modern history, it's here and it's gone in the next day. But we're left with all the remnants of history, the pyramids, the things that Pierce has been trying to, you know, sort of highlight in his introduction to it all. And how do you make sense of it? Because do you still honestly, you know, you must see you're intelligent. I've got to talk to you like you're intelligent, right? You've got to agree with me on something, that it is a lie. That when they tell you that these incredible second hardest stone in the world, marble statues made perfectly, were done with copper tools.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Because it's impossible, exactly. So there's a contrick going on, all right? And when you look at the big contrick, it really is a contrick. So how do you get around that? Because obviously we've got a history that it doesn't do it. Highlighted that with giants. Yeah? There are pictures in the British Library, dozens of them, about these giants repairing Stonehenge. I don't mean photographs. These are hand drawing done by people of the time. But they're highly censored. You can't look at them. You've got to get special permission to open the books. And they're kept in a room under lock and key. Now, how do you explain all that? Well, it's simple, isn't it? The fact is, you're not allowed to know. And then when you look at it all and the products of what society's come to, yeah, it's great. I like a good pair of Nike shoes, you know. Yeah. I like Rembrandt underwear. It's a brand you're not familiar with in your half of the world, but it is in this country, yes. But what does it mean? It's here and it's gone. It's all temporary. So what is permanent then? What do we have that's permanent in us? And what have we got to rely on? Because if you take it all away as Pierce is doing so, then what are you going to get left with? What's left at the end of it? Because that's all you've got to go on with, isn't it? So I'm very curious about how you're going to rebuild this, as you said. Well, forget the she bit of the planet, if you like. I don't mind. It's all right. You're a friend. I do it for a friend.
Well, happy to go into it if it means if it's needed.
Well, we're running out of time, aren't we? Come on.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, you've been probably on for an hour and 24 minutes.
No, that is the question. That is the $64,000 question, as they say. Where does that leave us? Because, you know, this board over here, reconstruct the universe. I think, listen, it doesn't matter if you believe in this stuff or not. That doesn't even matter whatsoever. Just the fact of being able to question this type of thing, question what you've learned, question what you've been told. That's the most important part, because the fact is that you're now in a situation where you can question, which means that you're at the very least aware or awake or conscious. I won't go into those levels. I drew something on the board here. I don't think it's actually that relevant anymore, but you were saying something about time. And it occurred to me, this is actually the way that the sun would see if the sun was an electrical entity, a plasma entity. This is the way it would see our solar system. It would see it as a charge drop, right? So it would come across Mercury. It's not really the right color, but it would come across Mercury, right? And it would see a certain electrical difference, and then so on and so forth. Gets across Earth, it would see a certain electrical difference. This is a different perception. Chase these perceptions, because the point I'm driving at here is that as a conscious entity, that's all you've got. It doesn't matter if I tell you this is the way the universe is, and then you go online and read someone else's thing and they tell you this is the way the universe is, it doesn't matter. What matters is you have the ability to chase it down for yourself. And as a result, that brings more to you. That brings more conscious awareness. I can't, it wouldn't even matter if Orman or if I or anyone else in here said, I'm at this level of consciousness or I'm at this level of development, or whatever nonsense that means anyway. It wouldn't matter to you because number one, you have no way of verifying it, right? Really. I mean, it can just be anyone saying anything. The only thing that you can actually verify is what you know and what you can do. Those are the only two things. So that's the sidewalk to be on. And if you find that you're walking the wrong way, turn around and begin to restore those natural functions in yourself. Like Orman said, everyone's had them.
And what?
Those moments of clairvoyance, those moments of
They do still now, even today.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point. Anyone can tell you do this, do that, and do the other thing, but really, take what you have, take the things that are you, and enhance them, grow them. That's going to get you there. That's the only thing you have to do. Oh, fuck religion. You don't need any of that.
In which case, then you need to find somebody who knows.
Well, yes.
Or
How
somebody.
are you going to do that?
Or somebody that's able to show you.
Yes.
Or something of that order of things. But what you've got in its place, of course, is a lot of religious processes, Masonic processes, unseen so-called temples, and the secrets and the hiddens and the, shh, don't say no more, brother. I'm a member of the club side, and I mean, the usual sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
When nothing's really, truly ever hidden. It's all there in front of everybody's eyes,
Absolutely.
in front of everybody's senses, feelings all the time.
Yeah.
The one thing that nature never does, it doesn't cheat. You never see a tulip decide to get out of the ground and become a postman, do you?
Mm-hmm.
But you'll find human beings doing such things, although they're not tulips. I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But how can you be anything other than what you should be, really? In the first place, the order of the day is that you live on a planet that you are not greater than, to which you serve. You serve the planetary purpose by being here, which means the planet has an evolution, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's natural order of events, the same as we have a natural order of events.
Yes, she does. Yes.
That's right. And therefore, oh, yes, I can show you the timeline if you like. If you want me to, it'll take about 5 minutes.
That's right. Please.
Shall I do that?
I think
It's up
so.
to you. I mean, I
haven't had
your
this.
show.
Yeah.
I know.
know.
One of my shows, you soon say, I'll show you.
I don't think I've had this, so yes.
That's the guy that, see what I mean? See, you never miss an opportunity, that man. I tell you. Never gamble with him because you'll lose. Yeah, it's here somewhere. I'll find it. Like, this place is like a telegraph exchange. It really is. See what comes up next. It's going to appear again, hopefully. Oh my God.
Now it's getting serious. When I roll up my sleeves, then
I
and it's
noticed.
getting serious.
Why isn't that working then? Maybe I got the wrong one in. See, I should mark them really, shouldn't I? Ah!
Orman, your video's off. Do you
What?
know this? Your video is off.
Is it?
Yes.
It's not. It's not. It's mute. No, it's not.
No.
What's this? Oh, sorry. All right. Okay. Zoom is unable to detect a camera. I put the ruddy microphone in.
You were just on the camera.
No, that's all right.
Now it's muted.
Right. Okay. Where are we going? Can you hear me still?
I can, and I can see now. Yes.
Go.
Boy, you drew that quickly.
Used mess.
Huh?
That's all right. I was doing this afternoon just for fun. Can you see a bit better?
I'm going to sit down and
This is a timeline, right? You can hear me, yes?
yes.
Yes. This is the planet now, as it is now. What it shows here is this is the planet. This in the middle here, this little icon with a skirt is the planetary entity itself. We call it the Great Mother, planet Earth, whatever you like. Okay. And this is awake, conscious, and everything else. These are the connections to which, in this day and age, she has in her own domain.
Mhm.
One of the things about this planetary entity of it all is it has its own dominion over that domain. All right. So it is the Great Mother. But these other things here are all different events that have happened to her since she was, which is going to be put there, a planet that was hot, molten, nothing there.
Yeah.
So where did the elements come from then? The air, which you get from the gas, and then water suddenly turns up on the air. So a lot of water. They must have had a giant chuck a bucket at it, or something, right? And then you got Earth, and then you've got this planet whizzing around in a membership with the other planets, and then slowly but surely, whatever the reason, it finds itself requiring organic life. Why organic life? Well, you've got organic life on you, because the whole deal is she needs something upon herself or in her event that can do what she can't do for herself, to take it just that bit more further. So a planet with organic life or life on it has a higher, what we call divinity of life, than a planet without. So in planetary terms, she's up the scale, you see.
Yes, I
So-
follow that.
Good. So going backwards, okay, I'm reverse engineering the esoteric here. That's a first, don't you think? So going back here, this first one here is a picture of organic life. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but that's
Yep.
supposed to be an elephant, that's a tree, that's a flower, these are bees. This says here, the consequence of event is that this is the organic life, and that's an ape or around here, you see, on the surface of the planet. Air, fire, water, and earth are now here. That's what we've got. And this is organic life, the events of organic life, right? But that organic life is not on its own, because if you look at the unseen side of life, that includes the elemental nature of life, which you all have. You see, you've got earth life form, as it's called. That's supposed to be a fairy, by the way, and that's supposed to be a dragon, just to give you some idea. Dragons are fire elementals, but they maintain organic life. That's why you find a fairy at the bottom of the garden type thing. People have found all this out, and they've made their own little kind of wives' tales things, you see. And then going back from that, okay, is you've got earth life form. This is organic life, earth life form. And then you've got the, where is it here? What's this? This is it. You go all the way back to when it was just a planet, and the very first form of life on this planet, which was actually planetary, and that is elemental. They were first here, they were here before physical life, and they were there to maintain the planet's surface itself. So it was made by the planet, they there, and then slowly but surely, of course, Earth life came from that. And then if you go further back than that, you've gone back to this original form, what I was going to say down there, where it was just a planet. So all that long line of events, there's a lot more than that, isn't it? Weeks of this on here. This entity is not the same as this entity. This is a member of the solar system. This is an individual planetary entity.
Yes.
All right. Do you understand what I'm saying? So everything outside of the physical has an evolutionary possibility in the entity of itself. And that's the bit that counts. See? Now that, trust me, that's a 4-hour session just for you to get to every single bit, I'll let you have the picture of it. In fact, I'll tell you what, when I've done it, I'll send you the pod, all right?
Yeah, okay, great.
You can have it. You can have it. But what I'm trying to say is, all of these events are ascendant, which means the planet is looking to evolve into a certain life form itself. The fact, it doesn't really matter in creation whether you're a planet or not, human or not. What's important is whether or not you are in a situation to be able to contain what you don't have, but you can get it, so that you evolve on, right? That you develop.
Orman,
Yeah.
Orman, can you change your camera so we can see you talking, please?
Oh yeah, of course, silly son. I'm getting old. I forgot. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll do that for you right away, Iona. Don't worry. This sort of stuff, you know, Mr. Electrical, your default microphone has changed. Yes, thank you. It's very kind of you. Right, here we go. Like magic. You see what I mean? I told you you have these vents every time. Right? It happens all the time. Right. What I'm trying to say is, in the bigger picture, you've got to come into it somewhere. Otherwise, what's the point of you being there, right? So this is a sort of timeline event that explains why everything is here. But it's not to do with the planetary system or the solar system at all. Nothing to do with it. This is a consequence of the planet itself, right? That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that you are also part of the planetary process. So
Yeah.
coming to terms with that means, you know, but there's ways to prove it, but the processes you have will do that quite adequately if you're ever able to get them working.
Yeah.
We're really sort of like new second-hand cars, really, aren't we? Because we don't work.
Yeah.
You know?
And for some reason, we have this dualistic concept of us and the universe instead of, you know, like there's us and then there's everything else in creation. No, we are part of creation, right? We are part of this mechanism. It's not like, you know, the wheel is watching the car go by, going, wow, interesting car with missing one wheel.
Well, I see that on American TV.
You can see all kinds of things on American TV.
You don't get that on English TV. It's too rough. It's true, isn't it? Where's Zaya? He normally says yes to everything I say. Where is he? He's gone. All right. He's fallen asleep. He's not been well lately. Right.
All right, let me check in with everyone. How's everyone doing? Where do you want to go next? Happy? Good?
Yeah.
Interested?
You're the man.
Yep. I just see off the phone.
We were gonna discuss what we're gonna get up to, weren't we? With them. You really believe that?
The first aspect of this work would be to help people be more human.
Actually, the gentleman should straighten it all out so they know what the hell they're doing, talking about things like this, because some of the terms that people use are just totally ridiculous. They don't even mean what they are, you know. And I've often said this myself. You said it. You know, how many people? Come on, seriously. California cannot understand why anyone in the world got where it did without them. You know, that's the way of life there. I'm sorry if you live there, but that's the truth. But you know, every past life reader there tells you you were a bleeding Egyptian princess. Now, all I can say is there must have been more Egyptian princesses than common people. That's all. You know, but how the hell did it get to that? But there's no one to argue with them, is there? Come on, seriously, there's no one to argue. You've got a free market, ain't you? You know, you can, you know, why don't you pick a number out of this hat and I'll tell you about your past life. I mean, this is madness.
Yeah.
Same in this country too. I mean, now they poo-poo healers in this country unless they belong to the British Society of Alternative Healing. Without that little certificate, you're not an accredited healer. Now, whether you can heal or not, whether you heal by using, like as an example, through the elemental domain of things or not, doesn't mean a damn thing. And if you want to practice as a clairvoyant, you now got to get a certificate from the British Society of Mediums.
I mean, is a healer actually a healer if he's not healing?
That's right. I quite agree with you. It's a rose, still a rose when no one's looking at it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can only be a healer when you're healing, right? You know, I mean, how can a clairvoyant get a certificate from a mediumistic society? Tell me about it. That's like a dentist trying to get a doctor's certificate, isn't it? Seriously.
Yeah, right.
It's a madness. Any profound work that there is requires a series of basic foundational learnings.
Mhm.
That's where it begins, in those kind of learnings. But it's something you have to practice, something you have to involve yourself in a semi-serious way to begin with, because until you start getting results, I've been showing people how to do this for years, and some of them haven't got anywhere with it, but they never actually ever really do it. They just love coming to the work and they sit there and they say, that's fine. I don't mind at all. I do not care who comes into my cinema and falls asleep. As long as they pay, that's fine. You know, that's how it is, isn't it? Come on, seriously, the world is like that, right? But being able to do it, that's different. So I can walk down this street down here. I live in the centre of town, so to see 15,000 people walk past my windows, yeah. So I'm on the top of his office block, see? And I can walk alongside people down there in the street. At the end of the street, I'll know exactly who they are, what they are, not more than who. You know, I might not know who you are, but I can tell you what I know what you are. And they won't even know. Do you think about the situation? You've done that. You've been in that. Almost certainly, at least once in your life. There's someone you've talked to, someone you've shaken hands with, someone you've walked with, in that short period of time came to know more about you than you do about yourself.
Mhm. We talked about that last night, didn't we, Mark?
Yes. Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark. Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
You all keep moving around on my screen. So I'm going,
Sorry.
oh, there he is there. That
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I know, you keep moving around. Yes, but I'm very serious about that here. And I'm not just talking about just that one incident. I'm talking about all the time. But, you know, those kind of things is a common feature of your normal self. But
Yeah.
it doesn't come from your cultural self. And I don't hate the culture. It's fantastic. What an age we're living in. Come on, you couldn't do better than working in a field 15 hours a day, innit? Yeah. You know, and they put you on duty for a night because you've got to go bird watching, because it's the only way they can get rid of them, run after them, waving your arms, you know. See, that's how it works. And then your life changes because you see things in a different way, but you see it in ways that they don't, but they're not hidden, not really. So a lot of the mysteries of so-called power of this and the power of that is all bullshit, to be honest with you, because when it comes down to it in the end, no matter what it is, seen or unseen, you still have to have a process for you to even perceive it. Never mind about see it. Do you understand? Intuition and perception. Intuition for the head, perception for the, let's call it the blood life, all right, the body life, yeah. One's slower than the other, tortoise than the hare. So with the conscious life, you use your intuition more. With your sensory life, you use your perception. And they each have their speeds, but people wouldn't know that. They really wouldn't know that. So there's no point. You cannot have, there is not such a thing as an intuitive empath. I'm telling you, no, there's never been one in the world. Yet there's dozens of them advertising the fact that that's exactly what they are. You see?
Yeah.
They call themselves medium psychics, whatever that means. Yeah, you can be one at a time. Come on, seriously. Can you drive two cars at once? Because whoever's a medium psychic at the time is going to be very confused. Sorry, that's a Pierce and my joke. You know, we joke at things, laugh at things.
Well, here, you know, here's the thing.
I was in trouble at school for that, because when I got told off, I could see things around the woman, and I used to burst out laughing. And she said, "Yeah, you are guilty. You're laughing, aren't you?" Whack, you know, stand outside the classroom door. That's what you get, and expect it to get you into trouble. Because you know what the problem is when these things start to work again? They work without telling you they're going to work. And you will find yourself doing amazingly stupid things. And I don't mean jumping off buildings. I mean, you will say something, and it won't be you that said it.
Mm-hmm.
But because you become prone to those kinds of processes, until you get used to it and eventually take over yourself, it's a free-for-all. So you'll find you're having a conversation with friends, and then you'll say something, and your friend will go, like that. You'll see it. They'll lie through their teeth because it was them. They were thinking it. But you were his voice. You were his mouth at the time because you happened to be sensitive to certain things. And that's when clairvoyance starts to work, a different kind of clairvoyance to waking up your link to two-person, blood brothers and all that sort of thing, right? And this is what happens, and that becomes empathic. But empathy works through the perceptive process. There's no intuition. Where does perception lead to? Where does intuition lead to? Give you a clue. Intuition leads to initiative. That's where perception doesn't lead to initiative. Perception leads you to comprehension. So some of these divinatory arts, you need your comprehension and you need your perceptions, right? So your feeling life is very important. But in other ones, it's no good. Psychic is absolutely non-feeling. It's very cold, very fast, and very actually as it is. So the feeling content of yourself can't do this. So you need your nerves turning up, your mental life developing a little bit so that you have them kind of events as well. And I tell you, they are as exciting as they sound, really. But you know, there's a big problem with it. And I'll tell you, as a psychic, the biggest problem of a psychic's life in the event of being psychic is location. They know everything, but they can't tell you where it is. I'll tell you that for a fact. I mean, I used to have books and books and books and books, scrapbooks of things in newspaper articles that I knew were going to happen beforehand. But I couldn't tell you when, and I couldn't tell you where. And sure enough, a day, 2 days, in some instances, a month or 2 months later, that very thing happened, but it was distinguishable by its unique event. I saw the side of a whole big block of flats come tumbling down on top of a cafeteria at 5 to 9 in the morning. I saw this. That's taking a bit of a chance as a psychic, and it comes seriously, right? Couldn't tell you where it was. Anyway, about a month later, what do you think I found in the newspaper? It's on the news about this entire wall from this block of flats that fell on top of this cafe. And weren't the people lucky? Because the person was just pulling up in their car as the bloody lot came down on top of the building and the whole roof gave in. Whoever had been in there would have died. No question about that. I didn't see that bit though. So that's unique. So it's worth collecting the scraps on that. So you've got all this to do. You're going to have to start your scrapbooks because it's surprising what you forget, what you don't keep. And don't you think, Chris, that that's also important because that's part of your history now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Your accredited ability, right? You know,
and it gets to the point where so much of it happens that you need that kind of connection to your history in that, because, you know, I'm not going to say that it becomes commonplace, but it kind of does, right? It's like, oh, right, just had a clairvoyant moment again, you know?
It's like you've had an accident with old people, isn't it? I mean, you know.
There it goes again, right? I mean, yeah, but it does. And it's important because really making a note of these types of things in yourself, it creates it not just creates a history within yourself, but it also lets the higher parts of you know that this is important, that this is what you want. People only remember things that are actually important to them. So I guess, you know, the real question is, who wants to work? Who wants to work, right? Because that's what we're offering. We're offering a work.
That includes things during the week. I mean, there's lots of other stuff going on, isn't there? I mean, this guy has things going on nearly every night of the damn week. It's really amazing. Really. Yeah. Well, he's younger than me.
Everyone here is younger than you. or I guess that's not true. Yeah. Orman, this morning,
I'm sure I had 74, you know, going on 75 in a few weeks, 15th of June. I'll give you my address on application. Don't worry about it. All right. Yes.
Orman and I were chatting this afternoon for him, or evening, and he said something about
that was about 30 seconds. Go on.
Video. Yeah, but it's a chat. That's a chat. I said something about his videos and asked how people find them. And I told him the way that I found him was I just I googled what was it? Crazy old codger. I think that's what it was.
Crazy old codger.
Took me to his website. So
And that took you to my website. Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, he takes the mickey out of me left, right, and centre. I'll tell you. Yes.
So, all right. I feel like we're kind of winding things up. Any final comments, questions?
I have a quick question, but it might not be a quick answer.
Sure, Zenith, please.
So the work at Vercel is focused on the Sun core. Just looking at your website, you're focused on developing abilities. Any comment on that?
I'm sorry. Which of us are you speaking to?
So sorry, the work at Vercel with Orman is focused on the Sun core
Right.
and working on your cores and your different bodies.
Let me answer that one. I think
Yeah.
best. Yeah, let's see. Vercel was a sequel to an original group of people that we worked together. Well, they're coming for 10 years.
Synergy.
And it was to do with what's known as solar core work. See, I don't believe in the word soul and things of that kind. You have a core and it's in here. And in there is the entity of you, at least your blood life entity of self. The elemental nature of you is in there too. See? So it has in its divinity, that's a level of self, and greater potential than just planetary. And it can go all the way up to solar level. Now, you need learnings about called the rare creation, things like that. See, where some learning comes into it now, new knowledge, right? Now, I know you know this, Senny, because we talked about it. So we did a work for 10 years, and that was to develop a solar core event in those people. And it worked, and it's true. And they really are like that. Consequently, gathered around it, starting to gather around these very dynamic people were other people like yourself. And the idea was in that Vercel, which was a foundation of work and still is, would begin to develop a core of people to do with sun level work. Now, the idea is different from the normal because you have to take esoteric as you find it anywhere in the world. So if you find a little temple somewhere down or somewhere in, say, Latvia or somewhere, there's always a few of them out there, with some little guy wearing a strange thing with signs all over it. He comes out, oh, yeah, well, this kind of thing, right? Like a Merlin type character, Well, then, that's what you get. But as you go on around the world, I've been around the world twice, and I'm telling you, it's not there. The thing is that you might meet the odd individual here and there, but you won't meet it as a whole form of work. It's not there. And that's because ancient history, the antiquities, as we call them, is what Pierce was saying earlier today. Right? They ruined it. You've got every right to blame history for the way you are, because you had no choice in it. You woke up in this age now, at the end of history, suffering everything they dumped on you before you were born. Now tell me you weren't born pure. See? And it's in this way, therefore, but one of the things that is missing is that you don't have that core in yourself. It's gone, and you can blame the ancient Egyptians for that. They ruined it. So one of the works you will do if you follow Pierce, especially if you follow Pierce, is you will find yourself restoring the planetary and then the sun level cores in yourself. The planetary is in the blood itself, and the sun level is in the solar plexus, believe it or not. You will restore that as a matter of course in the work that you do. I highlighted it because I was going to skip everything else and develop a core. And then the core would have been able to, created a Vercel foundation around itself because they had something to witness. One has to be believed. One has to be seen to be believed, Zenith. No one's asking anybody to take it on free gratis because Just, you know, what I mean is, you know, just take our word for it. You'll have to do it yourself. That was what I did when I started the damn email in 1972, right? I started that. And the reason I started was because there's so many people knocking on our door because we were the weird ones down the street. When we went bump in the night, I used to run up to our door and say, here, quick, we've got ghosts. So, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning. Who cares? Go and give them some toast. Mrs. White saw the ghost eating toast after we have a lamppost, right? You remember that old nursery rhyme? Anyway, so we said, right, that's it. We'll gather them all together and we'll show them how to do it for themselves. And that's what we do, right, Piers?
That is exactly right. Yeah.
To do that,
We don't even teach. We don't even teach. We
no
just
teaching, no gurus, no holy masters, no service to the temple. You won't have to wear a cross up your backside or anything like that to save yourself. I promise you. Nothing like it. Now, I've been up this road with you before, Zen, but see, the point is, you will find the same works with Pierce as you found with Vercel here. So that was what it was about, Zenith. And Enigma, believe it or not, if you know anything about higher works of life, you need what's known as covenants and so on and things of that kind to do it. And Enigma has a covenant for that kind of a work. All right. And what that covenant means is that he is connected to various things that enable him to do such a work. That is also part of what it is. You go through the worlds of connections and things of that kind. But up until now, it hasn't really ever lifted off. But Pierce is setting the motion now, and now it comes alive. So this is where, you know, it will occur. So you will see more people coming to this, a lot more now, because we're not going to be so reserved about it, right, Pierce? Because, you know, we're coming out into the world. Isn't that right? Where's Zaya? He's gone. See. What?
Sarah went ages and ages ago. I don't think he was very well, Orman.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Marie. That's very, I mean, I own it. It's very good of you. Yes. Right. So
now's the time, right?
you will get that work partly automatically as well anyway, because those are the kind of contents that one processes is when you do a higher kind of work, which you know, you're already doing it. You already have a sun level core anyway, the time you've been involved with it all. The only thing is, you've got a long way now to make it work. Well, you've got to take possession of yourself to do that, which means you've got to do some, you know, what other people used to call personal work on yourself. Now, I don't mean like, you know, where someone says, wow, I'm sick of myself. I don't know who I am or what I can do. So I'm going to change myself, which means this. How can someone who doesn't know what they are, where they're going or what they're doing change themselves? I mean, how are they going to do that when they don't even know where they are? You know what I mean? So for a while, it's a question of having to take the work and then doing what all of us have to do with it. And that's make it work on ourselves, you know? And that's when the art of it comes into it, because we always do demonstrations, don't we? We demonstrate what it is we can do at the time, even though you may not be aware of it. That has been going on here tonight. And also, we leave you with things to try out about what we've been talking about, right? So there's always something to go on with and to come back about, right? Yes.
So I'm inclined to say probably time to wrap up. And yeah, if anyone has anything else, Sachin, I'll make sure you get a link to the video as well. Yep.
Well, Mr. Pierce, once again, you held the day. Yeah, a lot of respect for this man. All right. So I wish you the best. And good to see you.
Everyone here as well.
I should see you around. I'll come next Sunday as well, you know, but I won't interfere next week.
Ah, you didn't interfere.
I'll try not to. I'll try not to.
Can I get that in writing?
I'll do my best. I'll do my best. You know, but it's difficult, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, right.
I'm going to let you come to one of mine and then you can do what you like. All right. Just once.
All right. All right.
All right. Anyway,
All right.
I'll say good night to you all myself. All right. So
Yes, thank
good
you
to
all so
see
much.
you all. You know,
Yeah.
see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Cheers.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
And
Bye, everyone.
Orman's
Yeah.
leaving
Send
the
it.
stadium. There he goes. Let's see.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone.
And,
Hi, Kevin. Good night. Good
night.
night.
Good night.